Hey guys, it's Jerry Bus here. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today's video was inspired by ZACK SNYDER'S Justice League. If you haven't watched it yet, I recommend it. It's a really good movie. And before anyone says I'm a DC fanboy, nope, I am not. I actually love Marvel, but I have to give it to ZACK SNYDER. The movie was really good, just on point. So yeah, let's begin today's video. Welcome back. Today we are recreating one of the scenes from the movie that I thought was kind of underrated. By underrated I mean none of my friends, no one on the internet is actually talking about that particular scene. And that scene was the Flash scene where he saved the girl. I think her name is Iris. I'm not sure if that is Iris, but if it's Iris then good cast. She's beautiful. But yeah, that scene with the accident and the whole slow motion and everything was pretty good, so I just figured if I could try and recreate that particular scene using 3D and Photoshop. But there was actually two shots from that same scene because I didn't know which one. I was kind of confused which one to recreate, so I just took a screenshot of those two particular shots and sent it to a couple of friends for them to vote and see which one would actually make the cut. And these were the two scenes. The second one was what people actually chose the most. By people, I mean I just sent it to about 7 people. So yeah, the second one had about 5 votes and the first one had 2 votes. So yeah, let's start it. First things first, let's launch DAR Studio. In DAR Studio here, I just load up a character, a female character to represent Iris. Here, I just tried to give her some clothes that was similar to what she was wearing in the original scene. After that, I just gave her some hair and started posing her. After the pose, I just simulated the clothes to match up the pose, so it kind of looks a little bit natural. Over here, I just let the machine do its thing. After the simulation, I just tried to make the pose a bit more perfect. The next thing I did was to correct her facial expression. She didn't look scared at all. I've never seen anyone that doesn't look that scared to die, but she looked like she was rather in love. Love at first sight by seeing Barry Allen. I don't know how that feels, but that must be nice. Really nice. The next thing I did was to try to make her coat look like it was defying gravity. So after that, I just changed the sweater she was wearing because the first one I was having some simulation issues, which I don't know how that happened, but it just wasn't working. So I changed that one to another sweater. And I introduced a male character to represent Barry Allen. I just gave him some simple clothes and started posing him right away. After all that, the only thing left was to just make the poses a bit more perfect, give the correct colors to the clothes she was wearing and he was wearing, the correct shaders, the correct textures, the lightning, the camera, everything. That was what was left. After that, I just hit render and waited for the thing to render. This was the final rendered image from DAR Studio. It was a 5K render. I made it 5K because I'm actually a pixel freak and I also wanted to focus on some details in this image. Now let's launch my favorite software and the love of my life, Photoshop. In Photoshop, I just imported the image and started importing some objects that was actually important in the image. The first object was the car. And since I'm using pixel script for the objects, it means the objects are all 3D and I can choose the angles and wherever I want them to be. So I brought in the car and then the next thing I brought in was the building. So I brought in the building and placed it at the background, put it in the right position and the right angle, and I also did the same for the car. The next thing I imported was a signboard. With this signboard, I wanted it to act as a light source also, so I had plans for it, so I just placed it there for the meantime. The next thing I added was the sausages. The sausages was actually something, but then I just added a couple around the whole image and it was looking actually pretty good. After that, I just corrected a few mistakes that happened during the render. It usually happens with DAR Studio, and then I made the background a bit more darker so you can focus on the subjects. Once that was done, I started matching the car's exterior and interior to that of the original. This was a lot of painting and highlighting and shadow painting and all that. This is actually where I took the most time creating this artwork. This took me a long time. Once that was done, I went to the signboard and started creating some shadows and highlights for that as well. But the signboard was looking too empty. So what would be the perfect poster to be on that signboard? Obviously, I just went to Google and looked for a Zack Snyder Justice League poster, the movie poster, and just brought that into Photoshop and placed it on the signboard. Over there, I just matched up the shadows and the highlights so it looks a little bit real. Now I had to change the colors of the clothes they were wearing, so I used the hue and saturation layer to do that, and then I started painting the shadows and highlights on our subjects. But in order to do that, I need to find the light source in this art piece, and the dominant light source would obviously be the digital signboard beside them. So I made some glow around the signboard, created some light sources around it, so it's going to kind of direct my shadows and my highlights. And once that was done, I started painting the highlights on iris and the sausages. Sausages. After that, I just placed the original and my artwork side by side to see if I had missed something a little bit obvious. And obviously the one I had missed was the watch Barry Allen was wearing. So I went back to Pixel Square to look for a simple watch and then just placed it in Photoshop. Over here, I just matched the angle, created some shadows and highlights to match the whole image so the watch doesn't look a little bit out of place. The next thing I did was to add some lightning overlays around the whole image because Barry Allen was in flash mode. So I did that and I started creating some subtle glow all around the lightning because lightning is actually a source of light, which is ironic because the name is lightning. So I started creating some subtle glow all around it. Then I created some highlights around Barry so it matches the whole lightning thing happening right now. After that, the next thing to do was to focus on the details, and for the details I brought in some shattered glasses. I brought in some shattered glass, so I did that and started matching the highlights and the shadows of the glass so it matches the whole theme of the image. At this point, the image was looking good, so I added some fog all around the image to create some depth. Behind the car, in front of Iris, behind Iris, in front of Barry, behind Barry, in front of the signboard. You know, just all around the image. It was all over the place. After all that, the last thing to do before actually color grading this image was to create the actual depth. And for the actual depth, I just used some motion blur and field blur. So basically, I grouped every single object in this image, and I am talking about over 100 layers in this Photoshop artwork. I had to group every single one of them to add a little bit of motion blur and field blur so it looks a little bit real. So once that was done, I just went into the camera raw filter and started color grading. And I was a fan of Zack Snyder's grade for the Justice League movie, so I tried to match this artwork to kind of fit the whole grade of the movie. So it was dark and grungy, and you know, so this is how the image was looking without the color grade, and this is how the image was looking with Zack Snyder's inspired color grade. So yeah, after that, I really liked what I was seeing. I sent it to a couple of friends and they were like, the image is a little bit too dark and kind of, they know it's inspired by Justice League's grade, but then, you know, for the actual normal consumer viewers, some viewers are not going to really appreciate it. So I created another artwork, the same thing but just a different color grade, something that if the color grade wasn't inspired from Zack Snyder, I would have color graded it that way. So this is Zack Snyder's color grade, and this is my color grade for my own if it wasn't inspired from Zack Snyder. So here it is side by side. To be honest, I really don't know which one I prefer. So yeah, basically that is today's video, and if you haven't watched the Justice League yet, I recommend you to go and watch it. It's 4 hours long, so get some popcorn and some friends and watch with it, but it's Corona, so you can't even get some friends.
You watched 3 times?
Yeah, by the way, I've watched it 3 times. So 12 hours.
Wait. 1 time in German?
Yeah, I watched it 2 times in English and 1 time in German.
Wow.
Crazy. Crazy. Yeah, the movie was that good. Plus, I also wanted to find some inspiration from it. Hence, 12 hours of movie time. But yeah, go and watch it if you haven't watched it already. So yeah, subscribe, hit like, hit the bell icon so you don't miss when I post next week and any other time. And thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.